Hello, everybody, and welcome. Thank you for joining the latest EuroCham webinar on education during COVID-19 and the rise of remote learning. This is the latest in our webinar series where we aim to tackle issues relevant to the COVID-19 pandemic. Education is an exciting and growing sector in Cambodia, supported, as you can see by this population graph here, by a very young, enthusiastic population, very eager to learn. EuroCham itself has seen this through its training program. However, the sector has been particularly impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, predominantly because of the very nature of education, which is, of course, to bring many hundreds of people from diverse backgrounds into one place to learn together. And this is obviously not good for COVID-19 transmission. But today, we'll have the opportunity to learn from two leading education organizations that have been through and adapted to the challenges posed by the pandemic, and in particular, the successes and challenges of implementing remote learning. For all those listening, I would just like to take the chance to thank the European Commission, as well as our EuroCham 2020 sponsors, without whose support this event would not be possible. One of these sponsors is, of course, Invictus International School, who joins us today as one of our speakers as well. So, to briefly introduce the structure of the webinar, it will follow a three-part structure that will last around 1 hour, including Q&A. First, our speaker from Invictus International School will explain why they considered the Cambodian market an attractive investment destination and how they have adapted to COVID-19. And second, our speaker from CAMED Business School will do the same, explain the challenges and opportunities they have faced in Cambodia and how in particular they've adapted to a remote learning environment. Finally, we will end with a live Q&A session where audience members can post their questions. And that's an important point. If you have a question at any point, please type it in to the chat window in the bottom right of your screen. We will either address it during the flow of the presentation or it will be addressed at the Q&A at the end. And so to just address an audience question ahead of time, the slides will be available and will be posted on our EuroCham YouTube channel along with the recorded webinar. For everyone registered today, you'll be sent a personal email with the link once it's ready. So to briefly introduce myself, my name is Tom Hesketh and I'm the Business Services Manager at EuroCham Cambodia. As part of the European Union ICI Plus grant, which funds EuroCham, my role at EuroCham is to support organizations learn more about the Cambodian market. You can find our services brochure on the EuroCham website. But today, I have the great pleasure of being joined by Mr. Clive Swales, Clive Swale, the principal of Invictus International School. And so Clive, I wonder if you just wanted to say a few words to introduce yourself.
Sure. Hello, everyone. As I've already been introduced, I don't need to repeat my name. So just a brief introduction. I'm originally from New Zealand. I've been in international education now for over 10 years. I've been working in different countries, Brazil, Uruguay, Vietnam, Rwanda, and now here in Cambodia at Invictus. So we're really excited to be starting a new school here, and it's exciting to have the opportunity to speak to you today on the two questions that we have.
And Clive, thank you very much for joining. And so I'd also like to introduce our second speaker, Mr. Casey Barnett, the president of CAMED Business School.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Casey, and I've been in Cambodia since March of 1999. And in addition to being the president of CAMED Business School, I'm also an advisor to the National Accounting Council of the Ministry of Economy and Finance. I am a chartered accountant. I'm also a CFA. I did my MBA at Columbia Business School in New York. And previously, I was a World Bank consultant advising the General Department of the National Treasury here in Cambodia.
So I just wanted to say from EuroCham and on behalf of the participants, a huge thank you to the two of you for joining us today. We really are lucky to have two leading experts in the education field. So, just before we start, I do have to give a brief introduction of what EuroCham has been up to over the last few months. You can find our latest newsletter on the EuroCham website, and presumably, I assume in your inbox already as well. We're excited to say that for now at least, activities have resumed as normal. We have an upcoming speed networking session in November. We also have a new PowerPoint course in November as well. We'll have our popular Tall Buildings Forum in December. We're working on our 2020 year in review. We publish this widely, so let us know if you'd like to book an advertising spot for this. And we also have a new website to promote investment in Cambodia. And this is one of the key outreach outputs of 2020, led by my colleague, Guillaume Martevin. Later this year as well, for any members of Eurocham listening in, we're excited to launch a new members discount program later in 2020. So this will be a chance for you to post exclusive discounts and offers to Eurocham members. So this is an exciting new initiative we hope to launch later this year. If interested in any of the above, do get in contact. However, I'll keep that very short, and I'll now pass over to Clive, who can give you the content that you came here for. So Clive, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Okay, so just a little brief talk about Invictus just before we begin, and how Invictus came about. It was created by, or started by John, who wanted to give international education to people for a reasonable cost. So he started to develop Invictus, which is started in Singapore, and now it's here in Cambodia. It's also in Hong Kong, and slowly expanding out into other countries such as China. So that's really important for us when we look at the questions that we have, and perhaps why we moved into education during the COVID-19 here in Cambodia. That's what I've just gone through. Just coincidentally, the Invictus School here in Cambodia is, we also have the physical campus, and I guess one of the reasons why I'm knowledgeable in online learning is we're also running a online Invictus family school too, which caters for a wide range of online learning opportunities. So I guess one of the reasons, one of the questions is the opportunities in Cambodia. Why here, why now? If we look at the different areas that we have, we can see that Cambodia has gone a significant transition, and it's reaching lower to middle income status. You can see here it came about in 2015, and that's going to, and with the rise of it, it's going to create upper middle class status too by they reckon 2013. Predominantly, Cambodia is driven by the garment exports and tourism, and it's got an average growth rate of 8%. So it's growing really fast and quite steadily within the world's markets. So it's really one of those world leaders. For expats who want to come to Cambodia, it's a great lifestyle. It's roughly got around about 160,000 expats here at the moment, so and growing strongly. And then when you look at schools too in Cambodia, it actually has around about 50 international schools in Phnom Penh. And so it caters for a variety of different incomes and purposes and reasons, which I'll go into a little bit later. The other good thing about Cambodia, obviously, it's got international major connecting flights to international locations. It's got a really good climate, and it offers good physical resources. So if we look at international schools in Cambodia, there really is a huge amount of choice that parents can pick up from, depending on what curriculum that they want to use, through to the facilities that they want their children to be part of. There has been a significant rise in local private schools who operate as international schools, so you can have that flavour if you wish to. You can choose to join a school that operates somewhat of an international curriculum through to full-on international curriculums in schools that offer fantastic facilities. It is, the schools here are kind of demand-driven by expats. And so with the rise of the middle class of Cambodia families, you can see that there's more of a diverse pathway that people can take. The other really good thing for local people here in Cambodia is that Khmer is often a language that is put into international schools. And like us at Invictus, most international schools offer a second language, if not a third language. So for example, we're offering at Invictus Mandarin as well as French that you can take, which is really important, and it's a growing need in the world to have that second language. Some schools do apply nationality limits, and while public schools are mostly free, they're often not available for expats. So that's why there is a more of a diverse international schools here in Cambodia. The other thing that's really good and about Cambodia too is you do get a diverse teaching community here. So you get some fully trained teachers who are perhaps first or second year out of university, through to teachers that have been teaching for 20 or 30 years. They want to have a change and they want to alter their lifestyle, and hence they come over here for something different. In terms of cost for international schools in Cambodia, there is a variety of costs. So you can look at schools that charge as little as perhaps around $2,000, up to some schools that are charging $20,000 or plus a year. So though there is a market for many different experts, many different locals out there in the choice of what they want to do. And you can see that the mix and the cost of the international schools varies from the facilities offered, whether they're a mix of local or international ownership through to international ownership, with a wide range of facilities and the cost that goes on there to cover the fees. So I guess one of the big questions we're really here for is the rise of remote learning amid Covid-19, and what are some of the good practices? So I guess just before we get into that, a little bit of background about online learning. It has been around for around maybe 10 plus years, and there's been a lot of talk about it since the rise of the internet and how education can combine and given the opportunities that different individuals and families can have between education and the use of the internet. Obviously, because of COVID-19 now, online learning has become a lot more central to people's lives, and some people have fully embraced it, others are waiting. Some were used to it, such as universities, for example, who already offered online courses, while other schools had to quickly work out what was the best practice and how to go about creating this. So let's talk a little bit about some of the lessons learned. Number one is that when schools start to develop their online learning, there is really no one size fits all, and that's really important to know. And so when you're doing that, you've got to take into consideration the social and economic groups that you're dealing with. Some families might only have one computer, for example. They might have limited access to the internet. We also need to take into the fact that smaller or younger students are going to require parents to help facilitate the learning. Whereas older students can perhaps cater better for the learning on their own as they're used to the different internets and the different technologies that they can use. And the other factor to take into consideration is the loss of learning versus perhaps the lack of loss of learning. So at a younger age, students could be a little bit prone to losing some essential learning areas. In maybe the middle to upper primary, students are relatively okay there, and that perhaps they don't also need necessarily a lot of parent support. When you get into the secondary school, students obviously can look after themselves, they understand the technology, but the loss of learning could be significant if they continue to do this because they're not having access to the relative tools or the skills and the concepts that they need to continue and complete their education. The designs that we need to come up with when we're looking at online learning is a huge mix of a hybrid environment. So by this, what I mean is that the learning aids need to be significantly different. We can't expect to have students working face to face on a device for 8 hours or 6 hours a day. So we have to think about how we can reduce that, but also how we can get the best out of students through interactions with the teacher, and perhaps in breakout groups, etc. And also to have time away from their device so they can also work on different skills. So there is a bit of a hybrid learning. Some schools have also developed areas where they can have time online and then also develop students or bring students into the school and have them working. So it's different days of the week. Something else that's really important is about schools developing really good relationships. So by that, what I mean is that we need to, first of all, teachers need to develop good relationships. Because of COVID-19, a lot of teachers were forced very quickly to pick up technologies that perhaps they had never used. And so they had to retrain and learn how to use these almost as fast as what the students had to learn how to use these to interact with the teachers. So that's really important, and that can create quite a big stress load on teachers. The other big important thing, relationship here, is building up between the teachers and the parents, or the school and the parents, and developing that relationship and forming lines of communication between the school and the parents, and how we can help each other and how we can support each other, and what is required, what is essential, what we can leave out. And then, of course, the other huge one is building that relationship between the students, helping them understand that the use of technology is okay, helping them understand that if the internet goes out, it's not the end of the world. We're going to be able to come back and repeat or continue on with this. So always talking with the students, and also having the students interact with each other is really important. So creating breakout groups, getting them to talk to each other, getting them to share and express their ideas and their concepts. And one of the big things here is having building that empathy up with the students too. And that's really important, that we do discuss what COVID-19 is and the impact that it has had on these students. And we need to assure them that it's not going to be this way forever, and that it is okay to talk about COVID-19 and the situation that it's put them in, and to hopefully get them to realise that at some stage they are going to be able to come back and interact with their peers, and be able to play and support and interact in the class to a normal degree later on. So having that ability to empathise with the students is extremely important. The current trends for online learning, one of the big things is about the virtual learning environment and making sure that you do have a good management system. I think one of the things here, one of the key points here, is making it user-friendly and cutting down the tools that you use. So for example, in Invictus, when we're looking at online learning, we've really tried to limit the tools that we have available to the parents, and also the communication tools that we use. So we don't want to worry the parents about receiving emails or communication via 3 or 4 different areas or portals that the devices that they're trying to use. So we've limited it, for example, to Zoom. We use Google Classroom. We incorporate Active Learn, which is a Pearson product for English, and we make that as an interactive as possible and as user-friendly as possible. We try to create and place most of our areas, our tools, into one place, so like Google Classroom, and then use Zoom as a portal to share that with the students. And that also helps us to create breakout rooms too, which are really important for the students. The flipped classroom, it's really come about, and we often used to talk about that in a physical classroom, flipping the classroom, but being online has really flipped the classroom around. So what we mean by that is that students are kind of doing their homework during the lesson. So you're talking about the lesson, and you're getting the students to demonstrate to you live what they can do. And then what they can do prior to that, perhaps, is watch a recording of the lesson overview, or they can read a book in the lead up to the lesson before you start to answer the questions and talk about the lesson itself. So that's really important to understand. The mastery of learning is something that's become really important too. So, in a physical classroom or a normal classroom learning environment, often what we try to do is, with the pacing of the curriculum, you're trying to move through the curriculum to achieve the end result and finish all the outcomes by the end of the year. And that means that some students will understand a concept or a skill, but not necessarily 100% master it. What we can do with online learning is that teachers can spend the time to make sure that all students completely understand how a concept or how a skill or how knowledge is used for a particular reason, and they can spend time making sure that that happens before they move on. And then the last thing, of course, is the project-based learning, incorporating things into perhaps a meaningful context, such as learning about the rainforest and why rainforests are important, and then bringing different areas of the curriculum in, and then you can develop a range of skills and concepts. So you can use maths within the rainforest, you can bring in science, you can bring in English, or a range. You can even bring in art to have that as a hands-on interactive way in which the students can get away from the devices and build something around rainforests. So really making the project-based learning and giving them something that they can kind of relate to and understand is important. I think overall, the 10 best practices that we've looked at for teachers when they're looking at teaching online, and what we've taken away at Invictus is to be as present as possible through the video. So that means interacting with the students from the 5 minutes before the lesson begins all the way through to the end, talking with the students, not waiting for them to talk to you. Making the learning interactive and encouraging the students, and again, getting them to talk back to you, which is really, really important. Choosing the right communication to combine, and perhaps using digital whiteboards to help explain a concept or a skill, etc. Recording the lessons, and so because the internet might fall off, mum and dad might have an appointment. They might need to go somewhere with their children, but making it recording that so the children can pick it up in their own time. Or mum and dad might come back from work and want to follow the lesson with their children. Making the presentations colourful and less wordy. So again, that's about getting the interaction rather than getting them to read and focus on text. Breaking the students into those collaborative groups to get them communicating, to get them talking. We don't want them to lose that skill. We want them to participate. We want them to develop that collaboration and to keep harnessing and improving that, which is really important. If you do have assignments, if you do have work that needs to be finished, getting that out there early and being flexible with the due date. Again, there's technical problems that can happen. There's reasons that we don't know because we're not physically there in the house to see what can happen. And so we have to have these flexible due dates, which is really important. Getting the students to use multimedia to have creative assignments. They don't need to record and hand in and take a photo. They can be creative. They've got the tools and the skills to be able to do that with the online learning that they have. Continuing to assess the students on a regular basis. This is really important. We don't want the students to forget that learning is important and that we have to have benchmarks and we have to see where they need to improve, if they have learned a skill or a concept. And we need to give good feedback to the student and also to the parents. Again, this is about building a team, building a relationship, and making sure that education does continue and is seen as important. And then lastly, we want to be able to not have the students on their devices all the time. So we have to create opportunities for students to work away from their devices, to use their hands, to use their brains, to develop, to be creative with what they're doing, and that also helps them out immensely and gets them away from looking at the screen. That's all I have for you now. So I'm going to pass you over to the next speaker.
Okay. Yeah, Clive, thank you very much for your presentation. And for any teachers on board or people working in education, I hope that those 10 best practices were useful. I know that they were certainly very interesting for me to hear. So, as Clive said, indeed, we will now pass on to Casey, who will give a different perspective from teaching an older education level. It's university students and above, isn't it? Or
Yes.
age range. But for this, we just have to move to a slightly different presentation format. And so bear with us as we just share our screen. And if please let us know if you can see it. So we just go onto the Kahoot now, where we are waiting for players. So Casey, I'll leave you to show us the Kahoot.
Well, good afternoon again. And we have such a talented group of professionals that are joining us today. I would like to learn from you. Please open a browser window or with your mobile phone, go to www.kahoot.it and type in the pin that you see on the screen for 223614 and put in your name. You can put in a nickname. You don't need to put your real name. Welcome, Lisa, Sky, Camille. Great to see you here. Kosal, hi Zoe. CAC, hello. Guillaume, Christine. Guillaume, how do I say good afternoon in French?
Bonjour.
Bonjour. Bonjour. Parola. J'aimerais sur. Tom, Mark. Sue, good afternoon. So I hope to learn from you about your training interests, learning interests. Second, I will share with you a little bit about higher education in Cambodia. And third, I will share with you the experience of CAMED Business School and the effects of COVID. Makara, CD. Great to see you here. And of course, anyone that's slow, you can join anytime during the presentation. Or if you prefer, you can just follow along. Let's go ahead and start. First, we're going to learn from you guys. I'd like to hear from you first. In which field do you work?
So can me and Clive answer this as well?
Please, yeah, everybody. Okay, great. Well, it looks like many of you are in the same field as me. Technical and vocational education, university education, teacher training, effective teaching, education management, hospitality, government, skills development, business association, marketing. Okay, wonderful. We're talking about learning. How about you or your management? What would you or your management like to improve?
Is that in terms of education or broadly?
Anything. Is there anything that you are interested in? Could be a technical skill, could be a language. Okay, so the skills that you are looking to develop: human resource development, training public school teachers on teaching methods, on math and Khmer literacy, e-learning. Sorry, did not understand the question. That is my fault. Limited IT literacy. You wish to learn how to respond to COVID with effective teaching. I'm not clear with the question. Yes, that's my fault. Student assessment online. Well, many of you are interested in online learning, and we are learning online right now. And this is also, this experience will help you to understand a little more about online learning. And this game we're playing, Kahoot, it does generate a report. So if you were actually my students, I would see your answers, and I would be able to record and review your answers and your performance. Have you studied online yourself this year? Oh, I'm sorry, we lost the responses to that question. We're going to the next question, which is, what is the number of authorized institutes of higher education in Cambodia? Can you take a guess?
If anybody ran into any questions with that, you just have to refresh your screen and then it will let you re-answer the question.
Okay, well, this is also a good experience just to see how nothing works as intended. Okay, well, the question was, what is the number of authorized institutes of higher education in Cambodia? And I got the answer for you. The answer is 165. And higher education means degree granting institutions with the right to issue bachelor degrees, etc. Out of 165, 114 are authorized under the Ministry of Education, Youth and Sports, and 37 are under the Ministry of Labor and Vocational Training. You can see those two numbers don't add up to 165. That's because there are many other institutes that are under other universities, ministries. For example, there is a university under the Ministry of Defense, under the Ministry of Interior, the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Agriculture. But most of them are under the Ministry of Education, Youth and Sports. And the education accreditation body, the Accreditation Committee of Cambodia, is under the Ministry of Education. Although there are 165 authorized institutes of higher education in Cambodia, CAMED is under the Ministry of Education. We are not only accredited fully by the Ministry of Education, we are also accredited regionally by the ASEAN University Network Quality Assurance. We are the only institute of higher education in Cambodia to be accredited by the ASEAN University Network. And we're also recognized by the ACCA of the UK, and we are the only official CFA Institute partner in Cambodia. For accredited institutes of higher education, I think I missed a slide, but we'll go ahead and get your opinion on this. This question was one of the big concerns of our professors. They were really worried about their evaluation by the students. So some of you think that they were evaluated better, some the same, some lower. Well, at ChemEd, when we moved online, and we moved online in March, the professors were very worried, but our evaluation of the professors' teaching performance by the students showed that we score the professors on a scale of 1 to 7. The score by the students in May 2020, which were completely online, the performance of the professors, they were evaluated more or less the same as the same term last year. So the evaluations stayed the same. So the students did not mark down the professors when they were studying online. About the institutes of higher education, we skipped a slide. So one thing I wanted to say that not many people know is that there are only 10 universities or institutes of higher education in Cambodia that are accredited by the Accreditation Committee of Cambodia. There are only 10. So although there are 165 institutes of higher education, actually only 10 are accredited. And I'm happy to say ChemEd is one of the 10. Now, the Ministry of Education on March 16 issued a command to all universities and institutes of higher education to close. We were not allowed to teach physically. And I'm also very proud to say that we did not delay, we did not lose a single day of class, that we immediately transitioned online. We did not need to train our teachers or to invest in any new equipment or software. We had already, more or less, were ready for this several years ago. All of our students we have a laptop requirement at our institute. All students must attend class with a laptop. And most of our classes use software like the software we're using now, even during physical classes. And 4 years ago, we started to video all the classes. So we have been videoing all the classes and putting them available online for the last 4 years. So to switch to teaching online, it wasn't an issue for us. We were ready. And we do teach live, so we require attendance. We believe that this disciplines the students, and it also allows for the interaction and the testing and the communication that is part of learning. So we teach live, all the classes are live, but if the student is absent, they can watch a video, or they can use the video to review. So I'm happy to say that the evaluations turned out well, but there are some bad points. I'd like to look at the second bar chart, the second bar here, which is how well are you able to pay attention during your online class? It was relatively low. The score was lower than the other evaluations. So students are telling us that they have a hard time paying attention. And this is so true. It's easy for the students to get distracted by Facebook, by YouTube, chatting with friends. And even right now, I'm sure we lost a few of you. Some of you are already looking at your Facebook feed. Some of you are looking at the news, reading the news while you listen to my voice. So you are distracted, and students are distracted. So this is a challenge for us, and we have been trying to meet the challenge by using software like the one we're using now to engage and ask questions. Another issue is examinations, because we cannot have the physical examinations. It was relatively low. The score was lower than the other evaluations. So students are telling us that they have a hard time paying attention. And this is so true. It's easy for the students to get distracted by Facebook, by YouTube, chatting with friends. And even right now, I'm sure we lost a few of you. Some of you are already looking at your Facebook feed. Some of you are looking at the news, reading the news while you listen to my voice. So you are distracted, and students are distracted. So this is a challenge for us, and we have been trying to meet the challenge by using software like the one we're using now to engage and ask questions. Another issue is examinations, because we cannot have the physical examinations. And I'm now an expert in all manner of online cheating. And we've evolved very rapidly in this area. The way we do it is our online examinations, we use a 2-camera policy. We have a command center of invigilators. You are looking at a picture of one of our invigilators, and each invigilator will monitor between 10 to 20 students. And observing, and we use certain color codes. We watch them on their screen, and we have software that we use that the student must use our software to do the exam as well. So we're actually watching them with the video feed. We do a 360 video check of the room that they're in to make sure they're alone. We prohibit any kinds of material or speaking. And we have confidence about the security of the exams. One problem is that some students think they can cheat. And sadly, we have caught a number of students who thought they could cheat. And a good thing about this video invigilation is everything's on video. So if they violate any of the conditions we set, we have a video record of their violation, so we can fail them. What do you think? Are institutes of higher education required to receive accreditation for their online courses? The answer is no. It is actually optional. So institutes of higher education may request accreditation or recognition, or they may not. So it is optional. In the case of CAMED, we have sought recognition. We requested recognition of our online courses, and we received it. But it is not compulsory. We did miss a slide earlier about our student numbers, and that's probably something interesting to some of you. Comparing the enrollment this term, which is 100% online, compared with last year, we see that for our training of adult professionals, the enrollment has gone down by around 30 to 40%. And for our bachelor degree students, the enrollment has increased by around 8%. Overall, though, the drop in student numbers has been that we lost around 10% of our students. And that's because the bachelor degree students is a larger proportion of our students. And fortunately, the adult professional training for teaching charter certified accounting programs, the margins are lower, and the bachelor degree courses, the profit margin is higher. So our profitability has not been affected. Our profits have grown this year. We've also grown profits by cleaning up our house with expenses. And I always joke that this COVID is great for a bad manager, because for this year and next year, all bad managers around the world have a perfect excuse to blame COVID. Well, a good manager can also use it as an excuse to clean up house, clean up some unnecessary expenditures, and that's what we've done. We've cleaned our house, And we've actually increased our profits from last year. Well, I think we missed, okay, let's, a couple more questions. Okay, the answer here is no. However, the ministry is allowing institutes to apply to open, subject to inspection. So they have not opened all institutes of higher education, but any institute of higher education that wishes to reopen will need to apply to the ministry for an inspection. This inspection requires disinfection of the facilities, numerous health questionnaires, preventative procedures, snacks, temperature checks, social distancing, and monthly reporting. Here's a picture of the disinfection that we did at CAMED. I see he's not wearing his goggles, so I hope his eyes are okay. Here's a picture of me doing the temperature check. So we have these fancy machines at the entrances of our institute to check temperatures. So you'd prefer to study online. Now, CAMED received the letter from the ministry about a week ago, allowing us to reopen. And I'm also a teacher. I teach several classes on financial reporting. And I gave my students a choice. I said, if you want to stay at home and study online, that's fine. If you want to come to class, that's fine. And so far, they have all stayed at home and studied online. So we find that students that have the experience, at least young adults, children I think might be a different story, but for adults learning online, when they try it and they get used to it, they often prefer it. It also means that you don't need to drive through a flood, or in the rainy season, you don't need to drive across the city and find parking. So there are many conveniences to studying online, and my students, most of them are still studying online, even though they have a choice to join me in class. So thank you very much, and I look forward to any questions that you may have. We do have a winner for some of the questions who got it right. Kusat, you're number 3. Kusal, number 2, and our champion today. Tom, you are the winner. Okay, and Christine Guillaume, thank you for playing and participating.
Okay, Casey, well, thank you for that tour de force in Kahoot. I think that was not only a valuable lesson on what type of, on the ways that CAMED has dealt with COVID-19, but also a valuable lesson on the type of software that you can use. I've never used Kahoot before, but certainly after that demonstration, I think I want to learn how to use it. So we'll just now move on to the Q&A, as Casey mentioned. So for all of the attendees who are still online, now would be the time to type a question in the bottom right of your chat box, and then we'll be able to address them. During the Q&A. But just to start with, what I'd be interested from both of your perspectives is, I see that Casey, I think you've already answered this in your presentation. But obviously, the education sector has been impacted by COVID-19. I know you mentioned that some of your bachelor's enrollments have gone up, but the adult learners have gone down. Overall, when do you expect a recovery to the education sector? Have you made any plans or forecasts yourselves for when you expect things to return to normal? Casey, it sounds like things have already returned to normal. But from the perspective of Invictus, I know as a new school, maybe this is a more pressing question.
Yeah, I think that from this kind of 2 perspectives you've got to look at here, I think from schools, schools are preparing to return to normal. Some of the schools here in Phnom Penh have opened and are bringing in students with conditions. So there's limiting the amount of students you're allowed in the classroom, etc. To have it, or at school. Some schools, like I say, are doing 1 day physical, 1 day online. Like that. So I think schools do eventually expect a return to normal. But then there's the other side of the story too, which is the parents' side, where parents are concerned, fearful, worried about the COVID-19 and what can happen out there. And so some parents are opting to still stay at home and to use an online base for the safety and the precautions, which is valid and justified. And then there are perhaps other parents out there who have different circumstances. Let's not forget that COVID-19 has brought an economic factor into this too. Parents have lost jobs, lost income, and perhaps they're forced to not be able to go to a physical school, even if it is open. So we do have a variety of different reasons out there, but I do feel that most schools do want to open. It's a case of them biding the time, waiting, getting protocols, like Casey said, the permission from the ministry, everything's set up so that we can be in the best position to support.
Okay.
I'm thinking normal will be 2022.
2022.
Yeah.
I'm certainly hoping that's the case. But, okay, so we just had one question from the audience actually. I think it's touching on a point that you made, Clive, about the mastery of learning. One of the slides the question is simply, would you be able to explain a bit more about this concept?
Sure. So mastery is basically a person being able to almost 100, if you put it into percentage, 100% understand a concept, a skill, or develop the knowledge to 100% capacity and be able to use that. And so, if we teach mastery, we continue to practice and teach that concept until the student can demonstrate and show that they have in fact mastered it, perhaps by using it in a variety of different ways. And so again, like the online learning has actually created that avenue because of perhaps the shortened time online and maybe the condensed aspect that you're perhaps only covering the core subjects. So, for example, at Invictus Online, we focus on English, maths, and project-based learning. We have some other specialists, but those are the three core areas. In project-based learning, we have science and history, geography, etc. But because we've really reduced that down, you can really focus in on some of the and have students master really important key concepts 100% before you move on.
Okay, interesting. Thank you very much.
We at Kemet, we have an approach that we call outcome-based education. And what we do is we go to the employers, the audit firms, the banks, the companies. We meet with their CEOs, the partners, the finance managers, and we ask them what skills that a graduate or professional in their field will need. And those skills then become the target, the objective for our students to achieve. And the next step is to design assessments that will test their ability to demonstrate that they've achieved those skills. And the greater the validity of the assessment and the teaching, the greater mastery, I would imagine there is. For example, financial reporting. The way to demonstrate that you can prepare the set of accounts for a company is to prepare a set of accounts for a company. So we try to make the assessments valid, and that is one of the assessments in one of our courses, is that students must, to pass the course, they must prepare a draft set of accounts for a real business here in Phnom Penh.
Okay, that's very interesting actually. I know that certainly in Eurocham each year we put out our business confidence survey, and one of the key common complaints is the skills gap between the skills that graduates are coming out with and what's needed in the workplace. So great to see an initiative like that that's already addressing that point. So audience members, I would say if you have any questions now, I can keep asking my own questions to Casey and Clive for a long time, but I encourage you to ask. We just have one from Paul Pern. So public schools are stuck with textbooks. Do you have to follow such requirements in your schools? So a question may be related to the curriculum. So some schools, particularly the public schools, have a set physical textbook maybe they have to follow. Is that same limitation affecting your institutions? I think the answer is no, but I guess I'd welcome you guys to elaborate.
Yeah, no, to a point. So every school has a curriculum and has resources to teach that curriculum. For example, if you're teaching in your school the UK national curriculum, you'll have resources for that. More than likely, you'll have physical resources that you've used in the class. The trick here is finding out or developing or figuring out what resources that you have to use and how you can transfer those onto online, because not every resource that is used in the class fits onto a device. For example, a textbook, you can't necessarily open that up and expect a child or a student to work through a textbook simply because you're not actually in the class. So we have to figure out how we can change that around. So the answer, I guess, is no, but you're still mandated to teach the curriculum that your school is using.
Okay. I can imagine it must be much more challenging the younger the students are.
For sure. So, and that's why you really want to find interactive resources and ones that engage the students and allow them to use the devices that they have. Yeah.
For us, we are teaching online, but we still give all the students a textbook. So we do issue textbooks to the students, but the teaching is online. And for learning online, of course, the professors have their slides and their Kahoots and their various assessments and activities, but we still use textbooks.
Okay. So one question I think that both of you addressed during your slides, but maybe we could just have one tip. But it's if you were to give one tip from both of your shared experiences of how can you make students more active online learners? Is there one lesson that maybe you've picked up from the two of you that you would like to share today?
I think from my perspective, you as a teacher have to be engaging. You have to talk to your students, you have to get to know them, and you have to promote conversation and be interactive on the device that they're using through the tools that you're using. That's my biggest tip, I think, is to have that interaction going.
2 years ago, I was at Harvard, and Kemet is a member of the Harvard Microeconomics of Competitiveness Network. And 2 years ago, I was there talking to their professors, and they said that 50% of their MBA grades are participation, are the students' discussion of business cases. And I said, okay, how do you grade participation? And they said that originally the professor would just try to remember who said what. But now, 2 years ago, they told me they have someone actually taking notes, and they actually produce a transcript of the class discussion. Well, now with these online tools like Kahoot, we can grade participation, and everything the student writes or says and their name is captured there. So I think the way to make sure that students are active is, students are really motivated by grades. So if you're grading their participation, they're going to participate more. So I suggest grading participation.
Okay, and I know that but one of the things that I certainly learned from this talk was how to keep your students engaged during exams. I thought that was particularly interesting, seeing how you're able to implement such a strict examination process, even remotely. I thought that would be one of the key challenges. So I can see that the two being very useful. Okay, so we have one more question from Top Prolong, and his question is, I think it's more related to the nature of both of your institutions. You have an active international school for you, Clive, and maybe captive audience for you, Casey or Kemet. Would you say there's any of the technologies that maybe Invictus is starting to learn or that Kemet is already implementing that could be applied relatively with relative ease to the public or TVET sector here? I know it's quite a difficult question, but is there any low-hanging fruit perhaps for public schools or the TVET sector to latch onto in terms of e-learning software or e-learning, remote learning lessons?
I think a go-to tool is, like I said, we're using Zoom. You're able to, if you get involved in that, obviously you can get a free subscription that limits you to 40 minutes, and you don't have the breakout rooms for that. If you purchase a license, or you can then create breakout rooms, you can record, you can save the posts in the cloud or on your laptop, so you can send those out again and again. So I think that a tool such as Zoom, maybe it's Teams, I'm sure there's other ones that are quickly being developed out there, but an interactive tool like that, I think is valuable.
Well, I appreciate that this is a concern about government schools, public schools. And I remember meeting some English teachers from public schools, and they could hardly speak English. And I was thinking, oh my God, they're teaching English to Cambodians in the public high school, but they don't speak English themselves. What's going on? I think online learning, one thing that you could consider is that perhaps there is a benefit to having a good, high-quality, talented teacher teaching a larger number of students, teaching 200, 300, 1,000 students, than to have 100 bad teachers teaching 20 students. So you can get your talent to reach more people. This might be something to consider. And then also manpower, having 100 teachers prepare 100 different lessons. If you can pool resources to create high-quality lessons that are delivered by a talented teacher, this might be possible online.
Okay, very interesting one there. So having a high-quality teacher teach remotely to a much larger audience. I'm not sure if it's a very interesting one, and I think that's maybe something that the education sector moves towards in the next 10, 20 years perhaps. But I hope that answers your question, Prolong. Obviously, that could be something debated for a long time. So I think with 1:10, we have room for maybe one more question. Which one to go for? To end, actually, I'd be quite interested in both of your opinions. Can online learning be just as effective as in-person learning, or do you think there will always be something missing? So I'd be interested in your answer to both of those. And interested as well because I know you're both teaching different age groups.
So I think that in certain age brackets, it can be just as effective as in-person teaching, because perhaps the older the student gets, the more skills, concepts, knowledge that they've learnt, and they're able to self-regulate and evaluate. The younger you get, I would say that if I was to take a snapshot right now, I would say that it's not going to overtake in-person teaching, simply because the students haven't got the skills, the concepts, the knowledge. They need help, they need assistance. We're developing the cognitive ability of those students. We're developing, primary school, for example, is about developing those first up skills and those concepts and those knowledge, and they need consistent and continuous practice of those skills. So I don't think at the younger age, I think as you get older, certainly there could be valid points and room. And in fact, parents that are involved in Invictus, some of them have said for our online learning that they selected us because their children prefer online learning than they do physical learning, just because that's who they are.
Interesting.
And then from the perspective of the slightly older students.
Tom, did you know that blind babies smile?
That's it.
Did you know that?
I've never thought about it before. But
So why do blind babies smile? They never saw it smile. It is designed in their DNA. We are genetically designed to be a social primate. We have certain expressions and desire to see other people, to interact with other people, person to person. We have a deep desire for this, and I think that whatever the case is, we will continue to want to meet other people and communicate face to face with other people.
Okay. So your answer would be not. You think there will always be an in-person.
They're
Okay, I think that's an optimistic note to end on for everything.
So with 1 hour and 13 minutes with our full webinar then, I'll draw the Q&A to a close. I just want to thank again Clive and Casey for taking the time to come down to the Eurocham office today to deliver this webinar. This is a sector I'm really interested in myself, and so I know I could ask the two of you questions for probably the next half an hour. But for the sake of brevity, I'll close now. So participants, thank you very much for your active collaboration and your active participation here, particularly getting used to the new Kahoot software introduced to me by Casey as well today. And also thank you to our production team, Guillaume Martavin and Vate Sov, for making this event, making the registration and running the background between all these events. So participants, thank you very much. We hope to see you at the next Eurocham webinar, and we hope you have a good afternoon after this. Goodbye.
Bye, everybody.